Hello, this is Jim Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Censored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Censored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have the President of the United States having his caddy kick his ball into a better lie, posted by Swamp Yankee Dan. That's a cross post from the sports subreddit. And yeah, of course, Reddit's going to complain about anything that Trump does. I personally don't really care that he cheats at golf, but Reddit... Trump could just breathe, and Reddit will go into a tizzy about it. And yeah, just because you don't like Trump doesn't mean you have to be upset over everything he does. If he wants to cheat at golf, that's on him. It just goes to show you that Reddit, that they really have nothing to wrong at this point other than Orange Man bad. And yeah, it gets really tiring, especially since that's pretty much been the website for the past 10 years at this point. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Hexif secretly splurges nuclear cash on Trump's free jet. The Defense Department raided its own coffers to fix up the president's $400 million jet from Qatar, posted from the dailybeast.com, posted by CH4Locks, and that's a cross post from the technology subreddit. And yeah, personally, I'm sure if it was Obama or Biden getting the jet, Reddit would say, oh, it's just a gift. But when Trump gets it, suddenly it's the worst thing ever. And yeah, that just goes to show you, it's just who's in the in-group, who's in the out-group. I'm sure if Trump was still in the in-group, he used to be a Democrat up until 2009, Reddit would be completely fine with this. But now that he's in the out-group, suddenly it's the worst thing ever. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump says he will not allow windmills to be built in the United States because they're killing us, posted by CH4Locks, and that's a cross post from the No Shit Sherlock subreddit. The only thing I said to Europe, we will not allow windmills to be built in the United States, they're killing us. Fact checked, America's more than 73,000 wind turbines across the country. And yeah, I don't really care for the Orange Man, but with that being said, just because, I don't care for him doesn't mean he doesn't say a lot of stupid shit a lot of the time, and this is an example of that. Personally, I think the libertarian positions, we shouldn't have government-funded energy at all. I think all energy needs to be privately funded, and yeah, that's why I don't know if I would support government windmills, but I definitely think if people want to build their own windmills to harness wind power, I think that they should be able to, but I don't think... I guess you can make the argument if people want to spend their taxpayer dollars on wind power, they should be able to. That's why I'm personally for voluntary taxation. People should be able to spend their resources on whatever they like. But I definitely don't think people should be forced to spend their resources on wind power if they don't want to. Well, but even with that being said, this is still kind of a stupid statement from Trump. I don't think windmills are killing us. Maybe they're killing birds that fly into them, but probably not people, I would say. Maybe if a plane flies into one, but if a plane flies into anything, it's probably going to kill the person or people inside. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump decides who is a citizen, posted by CH4Locks, and that's a cross post from the It Could Happen Here subreddit. And that looks like a order from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration implementation. And yeah, it looks like it says July 25th, 2025, implementation plan subject to USCIS implementation plan of Executive Order 14160, protecting the meaning and value of American citizenship. Background, and then it's a bunch of legalese stuff, I guess, of saying, about how Trump just doesn't want people who are just born in the U.S. to be citizens. And yeah, personally, I could go either way here. Personally, I think citizenship is something you should have to more so earn than just be born into, I would say. Just because you're born in the U.S. shouldn't automatically make you a citizen. I like how Europe does it, where just because two people are living there and they have a kid there doesn't automatically make that kid a citizen. And yeah, personally, I would just get rid of non-earned citizenship altogether. I think everyone should have to take the citizenship test, even if they are born here. Because then ultimately a citizenship isn't something that should be free to everyone. It should be something that's earned. I personally would say, because when you make everyone a citizen, suddenly that it devalues the meaning of the word, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump's bribery soliciting a new taxes on Americans map from CH4Locks, by CH4Locks, and that's cross post from the You Voted for That subreddit. and that looks like a blue sky post from Tony Rom. New this morning, we published a detailed look at Trump's second-term tariffs, the rate that each country either faces starting August 1st or is brokered through a preliminary deal. We will be updating as we learn more. And yeah, I personally don't really care for Trump's tariffs, as I've said in the past. Personally, I don't really care for any government taxation at all, and tariffs are simply a tax on imported goods. But with that being said, Reddit was fine with tariffs under Biden, but suddenly when Trump starts pushing them, they're the worst thing ever. And that just goes to show you, Reddit doesn't have any consistent values other than being anti-Trump. I'm sure if Trump was anti-tariff, Reddit would be pro-tariff. And yeah, that just goes to show you, it's just who's on your team, and it's for a lot of people, it's just who's on their team rather than having any consistent values. Then we have a proposed Texas congressional redistricting map as District 27, basically the whole state, posted by CH Warlocks, and that's a cross post from the Fuck the Alt-Right subreddit. And yeah, personally, I don't really care for gerrymandering, but of course, Reddit only cares when the other team does it. New York, a Democrat-run state, is some of the worst gerrymandering in the country, but Reddit doesn't care because they're Democrats. But when the Republicans do it, suddenly it's the worst thing ever. Then we have Ghislaine Maxwell files Supreme Court brief appealing Epstein conviction from Axios.com, posted by CH Warlocks, and that's a cross post from the LOL subreddit. And yeah, personally, I think she should be held accountable. But, of course, Reddit's going to say, oh, Trump's going to pardon her. But, personally, I think members of both teams want to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Something really surprising I saw on Reddit recently was on the front page of Reddit was Bill Clinton getting a massage from a supposed Epstein victim. And, that's really interesting me because, Reddit seems to only ever care about the Republicans being bad. They never seem to hold the Democrats accountable. So, that kind of is like a hell freezing over moment for me. Maybe Reddit will start realizing, it shouldn't be a partisan issue because both parties are ultimately responsible for it. And yeah, and Reddit, I think, is responsible for it as well. They let Ghislaine Maxwell almost certainly, Reddit would say it might be, some people might say it can be conspiracy theory, but the signs are there. They let her moderate one of their largest subreddits in world news under the username Maxwell Hill. But, so Reddit's responsible as well, I should say, for all this. And yeah, it's definitely, I definitely think the ruling class as a whole is responsible for Epstein Island and all the sex trafficking victims there. And Israel, he might have been a Mossad agent as well. I definitely think, it's like a big conspiracy, but it's all true. And yeah, I definitely do think, that's why we'll probably never get the full Epstein files, because it will make the ruling class entirely illegitimate in the eyes of the people. But so that's why I don't think we'll ever get them fully. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have shared from Bing. Donald Trump says his name may have been planted in Jeffrey Epstein files from MSN.com, posted by Ragnar OKXG. And yeah, I personally think that's kind of bullshit. I think Trump, I don't think his name was planted in there. I think his name was he went to Epstein Island probably multiple times, just like the rest of them. He might say, oh, I'm the resistance, I am the fight against the establishment, but he's really much more one of them than he is one of us. As George Carlin famously said, it's a big club and you ain't in it, and he's definitely a member of the big club. Just look at how he invited the Clintons to his wedding to Melania, even if he all he does now is say the Clintons are literally the worst thing ever. They're all on the same team, the other one. Then we have Matt Welch. I think Brendan Carr is a national disgrace and should resign while the FCC is disbanded. All of it is rotten, and people who vote for Donald Trump thinking, I'm so sick of these censor-race Democrats. I hope you're all having a really fun time. Posted by B. Hart Hurry, and that's cross-post from the We the Fifth subreddit. And I would agree with that, just because the Democrats are worship at the altar of censorship doesn't mean the Republicans don't as well. The Democrats, they'll say, oh, we need censorship for hate speech, misinformation. Well, the Republicans will say, oh, we need censorship for anti-Semitism. Well, in reality, the problem is that there's any government censorship in the first place. And just because censorship comes from the government doesn't mean that that's the only place it comes from. Visa and MasterCard are increasingly pushing censorship as well for NSFW content based on the Australian because the Australian group Collective Shout is pushing for it. And yeah, just because, as I said in a lot of my past episodes, just because authoritarianism comes from private corporations doesn't make it mean it isn't authoritarianism as well. We need to stand up to all forms of authoritarianism, not just ones that come from the government. Especially, how because censorship increasingly is an issue that authoritarians on all sides of the political spectrum are pushing, and I personally don't think that's how it should be. It might be justified in some instances, like child pornography or snuff films, but yeah, personally, I think, any regulation to the internet at all really isn't something that should be considered libertarian. The internet is, if you want to look for it, you should be able to find it, and if you want to look for fucked up shit to jerk off to, that's, I personally won't do that, but you do you. That's the libertarian position. Then we have nearly $100 million worth of no-bid DHS contract to a former ICE official's company and a GOP strategist whose company is only 13 days old, from NBCNews.com, posted by CH4Lux, and that's cross post from the Fed News subreddit. And yeah, that's a big part of the government enriching their allies while trying to punish their enemies. And this is just another example of that. You probably saw a lot under Biden as well when they were giving all the contracts to NGOs that were on the progressive side of things. And yeah, it just goes to show you how the government is increasingly gonna pick winners, and that's gonna be true regardless of which branch of the Uniparty is in power. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.